Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Switching Off Work-Life Balance in the Digital Era webinar. My name is Mel, and I'm an events coordinator at CMI. I will shortly be handing over to Emilie, Fellow of CMI, who is running the session today. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask them in the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can. Today's session is being recorded and will later be shared with you. Now over to Emilie West to begin.
Thanks, Mel. Good morning, everybody. We're having a really nice sunny morning here in London. I hope you are too, wherever you are. And it's great to be speaking to all of you. I know we have over 800 people on this call, which is fantastic. So thank you for joining and making some time to take care of your own health, because it is incredibly important. And it's so hard to make time for it and prioritize it over the many things that I'm sure are on your to-do list or the demands from work and kids. So this is great that you're taking this time out. My own experience led me to understand how important well-being is, because I was working in investment banking and I ended up having a very successful 14-year career in investment banking. But at the very start of that, when I was a young, enthusiastic girl in her early 20s, keen to enjoy London and enjoy the working life, I was going out a lot. I was working very long hours. I was partying. I was exercising a lot. And 4 years in, I suffered from burnout, which for some people can happen much later in life, but is something that can happen to anybody who works under pressure in a stressful environment for a long period of time. And what that meant was one day I was just running along, doing my normal jog, and 5 minutes in, I had to stop. I was exhausted, and I used to run a lot. So being exhausted after 5 minutes was pretty strange. I went home, I was in bed for a week. I felt like I had the flu. Then I went back to work a week later. A couple of weeks later, I tried running again. Same thing happened. And this happened over and over again. And there were other things going on. I was getting ill all the time. I had to have a lot of time off work. And I went to the doctor and they said, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome. They said, you've worn yourself out. There's not a lot that can be done about it. You need to work shorter hours. You probably can't exercise that much. And here are some antidepressants. Now, I knew that that just wasn't the answer for me. I definitely felt anxious. And if any of you have been unwell for a long period of time whilst working, there's lots of extra anxiety that comes with that, because you're worried about what your boss thinks, whether you'll lose your job, what your performance is like. So of course I was stressed, but I knew antidepressants weren't the answer. So I sought my own help and I took control of my health. And I really want to encourage you all to proactively take control of your health. You're the CEO of your own body. And I hate to tell you this, but if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to. So it's really important that you focus on that. And so I did, and I went to see a nutritional therapist. I got some second opinions. I did have a form of fatigue. I had adrenal fatigue, which is to do with long-term stress. My body hadn't coped very well with the chronic long-term stress I was under, and I had burnt out. But I was able, with the right nutrition, the right rest, the right exercise, to recover and have a wonderful 14-year career. And I ended up being head of leadership for RBS Corporate and Institutional Banking. And I loved that job. We were running a leadership coaching team. And while I was there, I asked the CEO for some support, which I got, and I set up a wellbeing program for 1,000 people. And the reason I did that was because through my own experience, I realized how important it is to take care of our health, and yet how much we don't think about it, how we don't proactively manage our health. We maybe go to the doctor when we're ill, but actually if you have something like a heart attack, you've had heart disease for 10 years. So we're a little bit too reactive, and we need to be much more proactive. So what we're going to share today with you is the 4 key pillars of health. And we don't have long, so it's going to be a bit of a brief intro into each pillar. But for each pillar, I'm going to give you some things that you can do now, some practical tips to take charge of your health, and the signs and symptoms to look out for, to see if that's an area that needs attention. And I would encourage you once a week to just do a little score, 0 to 10, for each of the 4 pillars, and say, how am I feeling in this area? And see if it needs a bit of attention. But also, as managers and leaders, you have a role to take care of the health of your employees and to support them. And it's not just a good thing to do. At the end of the day, if one of your employees goes off long-term sick, that's really hard to manage. You've lost a resource. So it's really good for your team members, and it's really good for you to do it. And again, we're going to give you the signs and symptoms to look out for in your team, and maybe how you can create that culture and have those conversations that mean people are more willing to open up, and you can help them get the support that they need. So that's what we're going to cover. We will have time for questions. We know some of you have pre-submitted. Thank you very much. You can put your questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end. If we don't have time, my email will be circulated afterwards. You're welcome to email me. Some of you have already connected on LinkedIn under Emilie West. Feel free to connect and send me any questions. We'll make sure they all get answered over the next few days. So let's get started, and we're just going to go straight into what are these 4 pillars of health. So what are the 4 key areas of health that we need to think about and we're going to talk about today? Number 1 is physical health, and this is kind of obvious, but physical health is so important because if, like me, you suffer burnout and I had to just stay in bed all week, you can't go to the office, you can't work, you can't socialize, it's very isolating, and in the long run, you may shorten your life. So it's really important we take care of our physical health. And as I said, that's a long-term investment. So what you're eating now and how you're taking care of your body now is determining what your health might be in 10 to 20 years' time. So just think about that next time you kind of have a very unhealthy week. You don't get the consequences straight away. That's going to come later. So just be aware of that. Then we're going to talk about mental health. I'm actually going to start with mental health today because in my coaching, so I now work as a nutritional therapist, I do corporate wellbeing, I do one-to-one wellbeing, but I also work as a career coach. And I help my clients manage their careers, whether it's getting promoted, finding a new job, dealing with, work politics. We all know there's politics in the office, whatever they need help with. And you know what they've all needed help with since we entered lockdown? Anxiety. The mental health aspect of lockdown has caused lots of people to feel quite stressed and uncertain. So we're going to start with that because I think it's super important. But even before lockdown, the stats say it all. 50% of time off work is due to stress. So you need to take care of your mental health and that of your teams as well. Then we're going to talk about emotional health. This often gets wrapped up into mental health, but I like to break it out because we're not particularly good, particularly in the British culture, at expressing and processing emotions. And again, if we don't do that, that has an impact on our mental health, on our physical health, and also it can impair our careers if we can't do it in a healthy way. So we'll spend a little bit of time on emotional health, and then we'll finish up with community. And community is incredibly important. I'll explain why later. But if we're isolated, that can lead to depression and anxiety and actually poor physical health. So right now in lockdown, we have this challenge where we can't be around our loved ones as much as we might like to. And it's really important that we actively work on our community and how to take care of ourselves. So let's just plow straight into mental well-being. And I want to start with some good news. So before you think, oh, this is, it's a tough time, there's a lot going on. The good news is we are incredibly resilient. In fact, 1 million years ago, there were probably between 5 and 10 different Homo species, different human species on the planet. And we, Homo sapiens, we won. It's kind of like Hunger Games. We were the ones who survived to the end. And why is that? That's actually because we are the most resilient and adaptable of all the species. And you even see it in the world of nature. I mean, look at what we've done. Look out your window. Look at the architecture. Just think about the technology that's been involved for me to speak to you all today live. This is incredible. So we are incredibly adaptable, incredibly resilient. And in lockdown, that's kicked in. So although it might have been stressful, most of you have been able to cope. You've been able to adapt your working environment so you can keep working. You've been able to find a different way to get food if the supermarket was a tricky way. You've been able to look after your children when maybe that was the teacher's job. It might have been tough, but you could do it. And that's because our species is incredibly resilient. So whenever you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, just try and remind yourself, I have got this in me, I can deal with this. Unfortunately, there's a slight downside to that in that we have survived because we have a very strong survival instinct. And the way we survive is we're very good at identifying risk. So this also means that when there's change in our life, our brain immediately starts running all the risks like a big news feed. You must have had this. You maybe get a new job and just before you start, your brain starts saying, what if I can't do the job? What if my new manager doesn't like me? What if I don't like the hours? What if I have to quit? What if they make me redundant? The brain starts running the risks. And then you start problem solving. So the downside is that mentally our brains can be incredibly active whenever there's change or uncertainty. And of course, what's happened in lockdown is there's been a lot of change and uncertainty. So again, you may have found yourself thinking, how will I pay the bills or where will I get the food from? You may have found yourself obsessively checking the news. That's your brain trying to gather information to mitigate the risk. In my case, it was checking the cupboards every day to see how much food we had. So it can come out in all different ways. But just be aware that that's part of your survival instinct, that your brain runs the risk. It's not a bad thing, but we just need to learn how to manage it because it can be very stressful. If you go to bed worrying and thinking about things and you wake up worrying and thinking about things, that's a sign that your mind is not relaxed. Good news, we're resilient. The bad news is we're now in a world of technology that is working against us. The most brilliant minds in the world have come up with things like Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. And I hate to tell you, they've even admitted it. They've designed it. They use the science from the world of gambling to design it, to make all these technologies as disruptive and addictive as possible. So we're sat trying to work, but all the technology there is designed to distract us and make it harder to work. So if you're like this girl here who's getting stressed at her laptop, you open your laptop in the morning, there's just a wall of emails. You've got your WhatsApp messages. You might have your smartphone that's interrupting you, telling you that someone's messaged or you've missed a call or sending you alarms. You might have Slack at work. So then you've got another channel of interruption. And even if you're just browsing the internet, if you're just reading the news, there's pop-ups, there's advertisements. So what's happened is our brains are overstimulated, and this has impacted our mental well-being because we're not designed to deal with technology. We haven't had time to evolve. Just a couple of generations ago, none of this existed. I mean, my grandparents had none of this in their lives. And so we just haven't evolved to deal with it. And unfortunately, that can impact our mental well-being. So we need to develop a healthy relationship. And this webinar, it's going to cover the 4 pillars. But one of the topics of this is just having some balance in your life. So if you're aware that you're constantly interrupted, how do we create a bit of balance? How do we give our brains some time off? Because that's what they need. It's like if you have too many things open on your computer. Mel knows this because just before we started this call, I said, oh, wait, let me shut everything down. And I had 10 different things open. Do you do that? Do you have all these different applications open and then you have a few different website browsers and then your laptop overheats and you get the little windy spiral that says your laptop's heated up and it can't work properly? This is what happens to our brains. We're overstimulated. We're thinking about work. We're thinking about this, that. And what happens is our brains overheat and we can't cope. We feel overwhelmed. We feel stressed. So we need to do what you do with your laptop. You'd switch it off, you'd let it cool down, and then you'd start again. So I want to encourage you all to do something called a daily power down, which is basically switching off the computer for 10 minutes. And I would encourage you to do this at the end of the day, because another thing we're struggling with now that we're working from home is that we don't have a natural end to the day. We don't leave the office, travel home, or maybe go to the gym. And by the time we get home, our brain knows that we've now entered our personal time. But if you're working from home, there's not that natural progression. You've just finished work and now you're at home. And the brain actually needs that routine. It's just like getting your children to bed. They need a few things to happen before they can go to sleep. So a power down is a really important way to end the day. And all it involves is whatever time you're finishing work, and try and pick a regular time. Try and say, right, 6:30, I will finish work. And unless there's something absolutely urgent, I will just stop and I will shut the laptop lid. I will go into another room that I don't associate with being in my office. I will sit in a comfortable chair, and for 10 minutes, I won't do anything. And for those of you who like to meditate, in those 10 minutes, you might meditate. For those of you who don't like to meditate, you might just sit and think about a holiday that you've been on. Think about it now. When were you last on holiday and you felt really relaxed? Were you lying in a beach? Were you hiking in a mountain? But just think when you felt, your mind just felt really relaxed and clear. And just daydream about that for 10 minutes. Or you could get something like the Calm app. You could listen to a guided visualization. You can listen to alpha wave music. Just look up alpha wave on whatever your music service is, and you'll find music that helps the brain relax. And you just need that 10-minute break at the end of the day. You'll find your energy comes down. You might start to feel tired. And then you'll find your energy comes back up. It's just like rebooting your computer. And this is an incredibly important break to have at the end of the day. So the first thing I recommend is that you just schedule it. Work out a time that you're going to stop work, set an alarm on your phone, use the technology. When that alarm goes off, shut the laptop and go and have your power down. Even if you need to log in later, it's still worth doing that just to give yourself a breather. Ideally, you would also then go and relax for your evening and have a break from your phone, have a break from your laptop, maybe watch some TV, but there's no notifications going on there. But we need to have a break from this constant bombardment. So take back some control and have some certain times in your day and in your week. So for example, on Sunday, I try and go phone free altogether and have periods of time where you're not being interrupted. Now, the other thing is just to think about the thoughts that you're having and whether they're more positive or negative. As I said, right now, our brains are looking for a lot of risk. So you might be running a lot of negative or fearful thoughts, which is okay. But you can also actively choose to listen to what I call a more positive mental radio station. So maybe develop a gratitude practice at the end of the day and just write down 3 things that went really well, or write down 3 things you're grateful for. One of my clients, they've started doing it as a team once a week. They say, what 3 things did we do really well this week? What are we grateful for? So you can share it with your team. But it's helping your brain see that there's also lots of great things right now. There are incredible things. Look how people are helping each other. Look at the technology we have that means we can work from home. So try and listen to some more positive radio stations in your mind. Just be mindful if your brain is running a lot of negative thinking. You might need a bit more of a switch off, a bit more of a power down. And also just create a nice, calm working environment at home. You can't control what's going on outside in the world, but have a calm environment at home, have a routine, have a time to start work, have a time to stop work. And be a role model. You're all managers. So as well as doing this for yourself, share it with other people. I'm going to share the deck with you. You can share it with your teams and say to them, oh, I realized I needed to do a power down at the end of the day. And tell them what your boundaries are and say, I'm going to stop work at this time. And you should have boundaries too. If they don't see you doing that, your team might not feel like they can have boundaries in their day. So it's really important to role model that and let them feel like it's also okay for them to switch off and not be on the phone all evening or all weekend. So what are the signs and symptoms to look out for? Well, these are some of the signs that you or your colleagues might need some support for their mental health. And the number one is if you find it hard to relax. You know, I had a client the other day and I said, just switch off all your devices and sit down for half an hour. And I don't mind if you read a book, but just don't have any devices. And she said, God, at first I got so stressed. I felt really anxious when I was meant to be relaxing. That is a sign that you need a break, that your mind is too active and your technology is too involved in your life. Also, if you're just getting frustrated and angry really easily, that's a sign. Not being able to concentrate for more than 10 minutes at a time. Feeling exhausted, that can be physical or that can be a mental health issue. And just feeling very negative or paranoid. So if you start to feel like everybody is against you, and I appreciate sometimes people are against you, but if you start to feel like everybody is, then actually that can be a sign that your mental health isn't as healthy as it should be. Maybe your outlook's become quite negative and you need to rebalance it. And the classic sign is if you find it hard to sleep or you sleep but you don't feel rested, again, you might need some mental health support. So the action I want you to take away is, if you can do it right now. Put in your phone a daily reminder to have a power down. Just that one thing is so good in rebalancing your stress hormones. They found it totally balances the stress hormones in your body. The other thing is watching comedy. Watching comedy also balances stress hormones. But also talk about this with your team. Create an environment in which it's okay to talk about mental health and lead by example. Talk about what you find difficult and what you're doing about it. Now, physical well-being is also incredibly important, and this can be a whole half-day workshop. So I'm not going to have time to go in this in super detail, but we are going to share an extra handout with you after this of a corporate athlete. And I like to think of my clients as corporate athletes because actually a career is a bit of a marathon. It does require energy and endurance and health. So you're not a sprinter. You're not going to work really hard for a year and then retire. I mean, maybe you will, lucky you, but most of us won't. So you need to have the energy and take care of your physical health so you can have that endurance in the long run. And it really does give you more energy at work and helps you think more clearly if you have a healthy body. So we're just going to quickly share some tips, but we'll share a handout of a before and after of one of my clients of what they ate before, what they ate afterwards, that really boosted their energy, that helped them lose weight. And we've got lots of meal and snack suggestions to help you. But just some top tips. Firstly, we need daylight. And something that's happened in lockdown is we're not commuting. So normally in your day, you would go outside quite early in the day, right? You would get up and go to the tube or even go to your car, but you would go out in daylight. But now you can come downstairs in your PJs, put on a decent top, and then just start work. So we're missing the natural daylight, and our skin receptors and our eyes know what time of day it is, where we are in the world, what season it is, and they run our energy and our immunity accordingly. So if you don't have that natural daylight early in the day, you'll have lower energy and lower immunity. And obviously with the COVID virus going around, you need the best immunity you can have. So my top tip is just to sit outside for 5 minutes in the sunshine in the morning. It's really nice. Take your cup of tea outside and just get some fresh air. But it's a good way to start your day. Now, some of the other tips you'll think, oh, I know I should do this. But things like drinking water. We need to stay hydrated. It's a major factor in your energy level. So I have a 500 ml container on my desk, and I just make sure I drink 4 of them every day. So just find whatever works for you, but a visual cue to drink water is really important. Now, plan your meals and snacks, because we all know that if we don't plan our food, we just graze and we take the naughty food out of our kids' treat cupboard. So make sure that you've planned your food for the week. And I always say, during the week, live like a monk, eat very simple, healthy food. And on the weekend, live like an Italian and enjoy the good food, the good wine, have a good time. So there's a bit of balance there. But in the week, especially when you want to work, you want to be eating healthy, whole foods. You also need movement in your routine. And this isn't just so that you don't put on loads of weight during lockdown. It's again because your immunity and your metabolism need that impetus of movement. And in fact, your immune system doesn't have a pump. So your lymphatic fluid, which is full of the cells that help you beat a virus, help you beat cancer, they don't move around the body unless you move your muscles. So just move for half an hour, even if it's a walk. Ideally get sweaty. And don't think it just has to be exercise. You know, the other day I was on a call and I just had my camera off and I was doing sit-ups while I was on the work call. So, or you can do squats, you know, you can turn your camera off. You don't have to have your camera on all the time on Zoom. That's quite tiring. Maybe you could do a call with your colleagues where you go for a walk while you're talking to them. So get movement into your routine. Also have a desk that takes care of your posture. And I'm going to show you a stretch in a second that helps reset your posture and also raises your oxygen levels, because we also need to make sure we breathe properly. Now you're thinking, Emily, surely you're not telling me I need to remember to breathe. You don't need to remember to breathe, but most of us do shallow breathing up here. And if you're hunched over a laptop, you're actually squashing your lungs. So if you want to have maximum energy, you need to do full breathing. And you need some good sleep habits. So set an alarm 2 or 3 nights a week that you're going to get into bed at 10 o'clock. Now that might feel early for some of you, but most of your deep sleep happens early on. Things like a Fitbit can be really helpful to monitor your sleep and to remind you to go to sleep. So I find that that's where the apps can really help you. Now, in terms of diet, we're going to send you a handout because it would take too long to go through all of this. But the diet that we recommend is the diet from the blue zones of the world. And you can look that up, look up Blue Zone Diet. This was amazing work done by National Geographic, and they studied the people who live the longest in the world, who live well into their 90s or over 100. And in fact, a colleague of mine, Jason Prohl, made a fantastic documentary about it that you can watch. And it's wonderful. And there's all these incredible secrets about why they live so long. But they basically eat a whole food diet. And the idea that clean eating is a fad is so ridiculous to me, because clean eating is how everybody ate until 2 generations ago. And processed food and refined sugars just weren't part of everybody's diet. So you might, when you're tired, feel like you want to reach for a sugary snack or a processed carb. But actually, our bodies aren't designed to deal with it. And in the long run, that's going to deplete your energy. So it's going to sound very boring, but you want to eat lots of vegetables, lots of whole grains and pulses, and a bit of meat, but not lots. And in the blue zones, they eat the amount of meat that's a deck of cards. If you think about the size of a deck of cards, that's how much meat they eat a day. So maybe think about the barbecue you had on the weekend. I had one. Think about how much meat you ate then. It was probably more than you needed. It's not always easy to have a really healthy diet. There are some great home delivery recipe boxes like Gusto or Mindful Chef that can really help you. But you might also need some top up. So just at the bottom, I've written my favorite vitamins that I'll recommend to my clients to top them up, particularly now, vitamin C for immunity, vitamin B for stress. So you might benefit from taking a multivitamin as well. And if you've got some vitamins languishing in your house, just start taking them, because we do need a bit of a boost. So what do we look out for? Well, these are some signs that your physical well-being needs attention, but also these are signs your colleagues' well-being might need attention. And this is tricky because now we're remote. How can you see that? You know, when you worked in the office, you could often see if someone looked very pale or unwell, or they looked shaky when they stood up. It's going to be easier for people to hide if they're not well, and that's their right. But make sure you pay attention. And again, you ask your staff and your teams, ask them how they are. How are they feeling? Ask them how they're taking care of themselves. That's a great question to ask. In fact, that was in a very early CMI webinar on mental health that was terrific. They said, instead of asking someone, how are you? Say, how are you taking care of yourself? So here are the signs to look out for. If your weight suddenly changes, if your skin suddenly changes, If your digestion isn't working, I know when I had my chronic fatigue, I was also very stressed and my digestion was a mess and I wasn't absorbing my food properly and I was unwell all the time. That's a classic sign of stress as well. Poor sleep, low energy, feeling hungry, getting colds and infections, headaches, those kind of things. And one of the best ways to tell is if you have a regular exercise regime. So if you run 5K every week, time yourself. And if you start getting slower, that's a sign your physical well-being needs attention. Or if you lift kettlebells and suddenly you can't lift the same weight or your weights aren't going up, that's another good sign that you need to pay attention to your physical well-being. So the action for you now is just to write out a plan. So for next week, write out a bit of a plan of what you're going to eat and when you're going to exercise, and try and exercise early in the day because our natural willpower is higher in the morning and it helps boost our immunity and our metabolism. So that's your action. If you plan it out, you're more likely to have a healthy week. And then on the weekend, just enjoy yourself. Now, the last two bits we're going to cover are emotional well-being and community. Now, a lot of people wrap emotions up with mental well-being. So let me explain why I separate them out and what I mean. When I talk about your mental well-being, I'm talking about your thoughts and your mind and what you're thinking about everything and how relaxed or stressed your mind might be. But that's different from your emotions, which are your feelings. And we can't always put words to feelings, but feelings might be you feel very sad or you feel angry or you feel frustrated or you feel anxious. And a lot of people, when they have a feeling that they don't like, they suppress it. They just stuff it down or they distract themselves with a glass of wine or watching television. And I do it too. We all do it. You think, oh, that feels a bit uncomfortable. Let me watch something on Netflix or watch something on YouTube. And so I separate it out because it's really important to think about our emotions and learn how to express and experience them. And the fact is, as well as being the most adaptable species on the planet, we're also the one that's meant to experience emotion. Imagine a life without emotion. How boring would that be? Because you might lose the sadness, but you lose the happiness. You lose all the excitement and the good things. So emotional well-being is all about learning that life is all about having the highs and the lows, and you're on a bit of a roller coaster. So if you're feeling down, try and have some faith that you'll move into positive emotions at some point, but also learning how to experience and express them instead of stuffing them down. Because if you suppress your emotions, they come out later. You might overreact to someone, or someone says something minor and you start crying. That's happened to me. Or you take it out on your partner, or you start developing an addiction and maybe you start drinking or using food to comfort yourself. It's not healthy. And it can manifest in physical symptoms as well. But also from a career perspective, if someone upsets you at work, isn't it much healthier that you're able to process that emotion and then respond in a calm way than if you lose your cool and snap at somebody? That's going to help your career as well. So what I want you to do is, and you can just do it today, work out how you're feeling and just express it. So if you've had any negative feelings today, try and identify it. Think, well, what is it? Is it anxiety? Is it worry? Is it sadness? Am I just feeling a bit flat? That's okay. Work out what it is and then try and express it. So the first way you might express it is out loud. So if you're upset by something that happened at work, you might just call a friend and tell them what happened. But you also might just make a noise. One of the good things about working from home is you can put yourself off mute, go off screen and just go, oh, like if someone's really annoyed you, you can just make the noise. And also, I don't know if you've ever found this, but I'm not someone who swears a lot, but you know, sometimes if something's really upset you, just swearing out loud can make you feel better. But just don't do it on a work call, okay? Don't do it in front of your colleagues. But getting the emotion out that way can be very healthy. If that's not suitable or doesn't feel like you, just write it down, just journal, or even just I have a note in my phone. And if I feel a negative emotion, I might journal about it. I might say, I feel this because of this. If you're angry at someone, you might even write a note in your phone saying, oh, I'm so mad at you because you sabotaged my project or you lied to me, and express the anger and don't filter it, but never, ever do that in an email and accidentally send it to somebody. So just do it in a note or in your Google Docs. Don't send that in an email. And then physically, some of us really like to kind of get, especially anger and frustration, get it out physically. Do a high energy exercise class. There's tons of boxing classes and Taibo kind of classes on YouTube right now. So you can just do a shadow boxing class, go for a run. But just first of all, before you do that, feel it, think, oh, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. Why is that? And then go and get it out. But don't suppress the emotions. The healthy way to go is through. The other thing is to give yourself some positive top ups. So right now, we might feel more negative emotions than positive. A lot of my clients have felt sadness or felt alone or flat, and it's because we're isolated. And we'll talk about community in a second. But because of that, we need to top ourselves up. So just make sure you're getting as many hugs or hanging out with as many people who love you and express that. They either tell you they love you or they say positive things, and do things your inner child would enjoy. Think about your younger self. What made you happy? Was it playing a game? Was it dancing around the kitchen to music? Was it baking a cake? And just do those things that just give you pure joy, and there's no other reason for them. And just top yourself up. So here are the signs, again, to look out for yourself or your colleagues about your emotions needing attention. And I think the main one is if you just feel overwhelmed, or you get upset very easily, or you're just being overly emotional. That is a sign that you've not really dealt with the core emotions. You've just been saving them up. So as I said, your action is to write down how you're feeling today, find a way to express it, and also do an emotional top up. I have a pleasure list in my phone of all the things that make me happy. And if I'm feeling down, I just look at that list and I do one of them. And again, do you share with your team how you're feeling? Do you ever tell them that you felt a bit down or a bit flat? The other day I was talking to a client and he said, "How are you?" And I am a pretty positive person, but I said, "You know what? I've had one of those weeks where I just didn't know what my purpose was, and I felt a bit lost and I felt a bit down." And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because I had a horrible week too, but I was just going to tell you it was great because you always seem to have a great week. So I just thought I'm not going to put a downer on this call." So you don't want to complain, but if you can just share with your team that sometimes you don't feel great, then they're also able, you give them permission to do the same thing. Now, the final piece is community. Why is this the secret to living a long life? Well, our ancestors lived in a tribe. And in a tribe, one person builds the fire and runs it. One person goes and catches the animals to feed you. One person goes and gathers the berries. One person gets the firewood. Someone guards the camp. Someone takes care of the children. Someone gets the water. It was a communal activity. And in fact, you couldn't live on your own. So if you were kicked out of the tribe, you would die. And again, we haven't evolved that much. So we still have that programmed in us that if you're kicked out of the tribe, you die. And some of you may have experienced this feeling. If you suddenly had a relationship end, if someone just dumped you out of nowhere, or if you had a job that you thought was secure and they made you redundant and you weren't expecting it, which happened to a friend of mine last week, and she thought her job was secure and it wasn't, the abruptness of it can put you into depression because your mind thinks, I've been kicked out the tribe and now I'm going to die. And that's why you can feel so down when that happens. So we need to live in a tribe. And in fact, in the blue zones of the world, when they studied them and why everyone lived so long, they found that these people were in community every day, not just with their family. At the end of the working day, they would all stand outside or meet at the pub, and they would all talk about their day together, and they would see the same big group every day. And they also often were religious. So on a Sunday, they'd get together in an even bigger group. And they found that being religious makes you live longer. But it didn't matter whether you believed or not. Even the people who went to church but didn't believe in God lived longer because they were in a community and actually looking after younger children as well, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So being in community will help you live a long life and help you feel better. And I know when you're down, you might feel like isolating, but make yourself message or see a friend. It is so important. So you need friends who take care of you, who recharge your batteries. You know, if we have friends where when we talk to them, we feel negative afterwards or exhausted, maybe spend less time with them. Spend time with people who boost you up. But also from a career perspective, you need mentors, you need supporters, you need allies. I always say you need a bitch buddy. You need someone who understands your pain, who you can complain to, but they'll keep it confidential. So it's not going to be someone who works for you or your boss, but you might have a peer in your company or in the same industry, and you can get together and just have a good old whinge. Sometimes that's what you need to do. But think about that. Map out your team at work and at home and say, what do I need? Do I need some more positive friends? Do I need a mentor? If you're not well, you know, maybe you need a nutritional therapist or a counselor, or maybe you need a career coach to help you deal with what you're dealing with. You know, a lot of my clients come to me because they suddenly at a point in their career where they've got to make some big decisions and they don't know how to make them, and their friends aren't necessarily best placed to help them with that. And also your community can be people you don't know. So you might find inspiration in celebrities or celebrity mentors, or you might follow someone on LinkedIn. You might find a speaker that you like. So I have people who come to my talks and then they follow me on LinkedIn and they listen to future talks. But find what tops you up and who you want in your community. And again, what to look out for if your community isn't in good shape. Feeling isolated and alone. And this can happen even if you're living with people. But you might need a firmer group of friends, or you might need to just see your friends more often. Not asking for help and feeling drained by interactions. So again, in your team, if you find that your team are getting quieter and more isolated and not asking for help, that might be a sign that they need some community support. And I was coaching someone the other day and I said, when did you last see your friends? And we realized that she hadn't spent enough time with her friends. So we fixed that. Also, if you or your team have experienced any issue in the physical well-being, the mental well-being, the emotional well-being for more than 3 months, so say your energy's been really low for more than 3 months, you probably need some professional help. And your company might provide it, but make sure you talk to a GP or you talk to a counselor if it's an anxiety issue, but make sure you get professional help. Don't try and do it all on your own. You're actually not the expert in this. So find an expert and make sure you signpost for your team. Where can they get support? And in terms of including the team in the community, maybe you have team meetings, but how about having a team social? And make sure it's inclusive. So it's at a time that everyone can join. It's not just around drinking. There might be an activity, but try and create opportunities for your team to socialize. And if you're the manager, you might create opportunities for them to socialize and you might not be in them so that they don't feel that they have to kind of behave well in front of the boss. So just work out your team and what's missing and think about whether you're spending enough time with your community, because it's incredibly important. So now we're going to go to questions. And as we said, we're going to circulate this as a resource afterwards with my email address. So questions that don't get answered or you don't want to ask openly on the chat, email me. I'm also a trainer for Stretch Connect. So you can find my other courses on Stretch Connect. And we've got some recommended reading if you want to follow up. So Mel, I'm hoping we've got some good questions lined up.
Yes, we do. Thank you for your fantastic presentation. I'm sure it was very helpful for everyone today. So we've had quite a few pre-submitted questions come through. I'll start off with the first one. Can you give any advice on how to deal with email anxiety?
So email overwhelm.
Yep.
Yeah, you need a strategy to deal with your email. Everybody does. Because right now, I don't know about you, but mine's kind of out of control. I took a few days off last week and I came back and it was just an absolute download. So you need to take control of your time. And I always say have a time for everything. So pick when you're going to interact with your email. So for me, when I wake up in the morning, before I exercise, I check my email because I get a bit of email anxiety if I don't know what's going on. And then after exercise, I'll deal with the important ones for the day. Then I'll check in again after lunch and I'll check in again in the evening. So I have one particular point mid-morning where I just clear them all down and I deal with them. Now, you might have a job where you need to be on your email more often. Maybe you need to be on it every hour, but just don't be on it every minute. And certainly don't have these notifications come up. Or if you need to respond to your boss straight away, and I'm hoping you don't, but if you do, just have notifications for the VIPs. So only their emails flash up, but everybody else's you deal with later. You do not need to deal with an email as soon as it happens. And if you do respond to an email every time you get it, you're training everybody around you to think that you're instantly available. So you need to train everybody to know that if they message you, you might not reply for a few hours, and that's okay. So have a strategy. There's a really good book called Productivity Ninja that really goes into more depth on a very healthy email strategy, but have certain amounts of time that you will focus on it, stick to those times every day. And then when you're doing solid work, shut down your email. The other day I had to work on a project and I shut all my email off and I put my phone in another room so that I was only dealing with the spreadsheet in front of me for an hour. And I had no idea what happened on my email. So really try and have some boundaries. And it was amazing how much work I got done, Mel. That was quite incredible without being interrupted.
Fantastic. So next question is, how many Zooms a day would you consider maximum?
Great question, whoever asked that. I mean, it's different for everybody, and it depends there's different kinds of learners. So there are some visual people who actually love being on a Zoom and some people who aren't visual like me who struggle with it. I would say, ideally you're not doing more than kind of 4 Zoom calls a day, but also think about your energy levels. So think about when does it work for you? So for example, in the morning, I'm super productive. So I'd rather spend that time working through my to-do list. And then in the afternoon, I can sit and enjoy a Zoom. And also remember, in a Zoom, you don't have to be always active in a meeting. You might be listening or sitting back a bit and you can enjoy a cup of tea. So first of all, have the Zooms when it suits you if you can. The other thing is, you do not have to have your video on for all Zooms. Sometimes you do. If you're dealing with clients, it helps with connection. But if it's your teammates who you see all the time, just have your Zoom off, because it's more draining when we realize we're on camera, because it's kind of like we're performing. It's actually more draining than being in the room with someone. There is something about camera and performance going on there. So try having your camera off for a couple of Zooms, and you might find you're a lot more relaxed. And also, we're having too much screen time. So if your camera's off, don't have your screen facing you. Just listen to the audio. And the other thing is, I know I'm going slightly off tangent, but try and get a blue light filter like this and put it over your laptop and over your phone. So I've got filters on both devices, so I'm not getting too much blue light during the day.
Perfect. Another one is, what are the most effective ways to be more productive and stop work at 5?
You know what? It's really good to have a deadline, because if you don't set a deadline that you're going to stop work at 5 or whatever time it is, you can stretch out your work for as long as you make it. So I actually, my way of dealing with this is I write down in the morning 3 things that must happen today. I mean, I have a much longer to-do list, but 3 things that must happen today. And I try and get them done by 10 a.m., which means that guaranteed I can log off at 5. I might, something else might come up that's urgent, but get the the things that must get done, just get them really done early on in the day. And that frees up your time. And again, have a bit of a deadline, but also there's productivity. Drink enough water, eat healthily, and have breaks. And I realized I said I was gonna share a breathing exercise, and I didn't have time to share it. But have a little break where, in between meetings, just have 5 minutes off and just do a breathing exercise where you lift your hands above your head, breathe in, hold it, and breathe out. Just do that now while we're talking. Just try that a few times. And as you breathe in and hold your breath, it slows down your whole nervous system, and it's like a little mini break, and it resets your posture. And if you have those breaks every hour and just walk around your flat or just go outside for 5 minutes, when you come back, you're so much fresher than if you try and do back-to-back hours and hours and hours, and you're working at 7 p.m., but you're so inefficient. So I believe in having a shorter day, definitely, and trying to get the important things done early.
Perfect. Another one, how do I encourage my team to switch off when they live alone and only work to give them the purpose of the day?
Yeah, well, this is such a good point, because there are a lot of people who live alone in this day and age, and work is wonderful because work can give you a sense of purpose. So what you don't want to do is put pressure on people to feel like they have to switch off and be isolated. But this is where arranging some post-work drinks can be nice, so that there's another work-related kind of social activity, but they're not sat there doing their emails. So encouraging them to take part in some kind of social, or create socials within your company if you can. You don't have to go to them. And also just sharing this kind of information and saying, oh, have you got a Zoom call with your friends? Or what are you doing for exercise? You can buddy up with people. You can do socially distanced running, but I've also got some clients where they call a friend while they're going for a walk. So both friends are going for a walk on different sides of London, and they're talking to each other, which is brilliant. So just encourage them and role model them to be sociable with other people, but they don't have to be online all the time. And also accept that for some people, this work is a bit of a lifesaver. So just try not to attach stigma if they do want to work late.
Perfect. I think we have enough time for one more. Might be a bit of a tricky one. What are the signs and symptoms of someone close to burnout?
Yes. Well, I experienced that, so I can tell you. I know there's been some great questions as well. I can see Steve has written a great question on there. So if you want to put that on my LinkedIn page, I'll answer it publicly. So feel free to post questions on my LinkedIn and tag me. Burnout. One of the earlier signs is that someone starts getting ill all the time. So I was picking up every single cold and flu. Anytime someone got sick in the office, I got it. So just one of the signs is that people just start needing more days off work, or their performance drops, or their productivity drops. So that is a classic sign. It's easier to see in person because people also could see that I didn't look as well. I mean, I went super pale as part of this. And I used to always go to the gym. And if anyone had paid close attention, they would have suddenly realized I wasn't going to the gym anymore. But also, we're very good at hiding it. So you might have people in your team close to burnout who will hide it and they won't show you. And whilst it's not your job to be a detective, be Miss Marple and spot that, if you share your own vulnerabilities about well-being, there's a much better chance that they might tell you. And also signpost support. Most companies do have some private healthcare or some well-being programs or discounted access to well-being practitioners. So just signpost to them where they can get help without saying they need it. Share it with everyone in the team indiscriminately. Say, team, I want to do a well-being session with you for 15 minutes. Here's where you can get help. I want people to feel like they can share, you can come and see me, and just make sure people know that you were there for them.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emilie. Well, that's it for today's session, and thank you to everyone who has joined us. And again, thank you to Emilie for your insights and expertise. If you're a member of CMI, you can access Management Direct, which has a whole range of practical resources to help apply your learnings from today. And for anyone new to CMI and those who haven't heard of Management Direct portal, it's full of personal and professional development opportunities, including over 400 videos, 10,000 journal articles, 5,000 ebooks, and more. You can also get 10% off your first year's membership by using the promo code SUMMER10. And also do sign up to our CMI free newsletter, which you can access on our website, managers.org.uk. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.